Good morning. My name is Alex Langer, and I am President and CEO of Sierra Madre Gold Silver. Sierra Madre Gold Silver is probably the newest precious metal producer in Mexico. We started production at the La Guitarra Silver and Gold Mine on June 25th, and we've been in continuous operation ever since.
Alex, good to see you. Yeah, you're a producer. I forgot that bit.
It is.
You're a producer now. Well done, you. Look, we're going to talk Mexico today, and obviously new government in place. Claudia Sheinbaum installed her 100-point plan. Launched. What do you reckon that's going to mean for you guys?
Yeah, no, it's been interesting to watch. So for us, we've been quite fortunate. We are fully permitted. We're also an underground mine. So a lot of the rhetoric, a lot of the discussions out there with the banning of open pit and, not issuing new permits, things like that really didn't apply to us. It was more of an issue of the broader context of investment into Mexico when there's uncertainty around, governments and changes and things like that. The investment community usually doesn't like that. Uncertainty is not a great thing. So what we're seeing now, kind of moving forward, is some really positive stuff coming out of Mexico. So we're cautiously optimistic, to say the least.
Well, cautiously optimistic is good, but what's it mean for me, investor? Okay. She's only been in, there's only a second week in business, as it were. We all think about mining every day, but maybe she doesn't. Have you got any sense of what it's going to mean for your business going forward in terms of maybe the way that you go about it? AMLO meant that focusing on underground made a lot of sense. Open pit maybe on the cards again.
Yeah, no, I think it's positive. Like whenever, again, uncertainty comes into a market, into a country, into a jurisdiction, it's when that capital becomes more difficult to acquire. Money stays on the sideline until there's more certainty. And what we're seeing now is there's positive talk, and we're seeing, share price appreciations for a lot of the companies that have, possible open pit mines moving in the future, things like that. So what we're seeing down there is it's actually quite a bit of optimism. A lot of our directors follow Mexican politics quite closely. Obviously, they live there, they live and breathe it. They were, a little bit apprehensive, to say the least. Same party continuing over. But it looks like Claudia is her own woman. She has a really interesting cabinet that she's appointed. And everything that's been saying is kind of positive. There was the open pit ban, and one of the 100-point things, I think it was number 87 or something like that. And that looks to be gone. We'll see what happens moving into 2025. Obviously, they're going to have more discussions, which is important. Some other stuff within, the mining code and new permits, things like that, which is positive. More mining rights and more community engagement. Those things are really good and really important. So there's a right way of doing things. And, I think now that, cooler heads have prevailed and new government's coming in, looks to be relatively positive, which is great.
Right. And that's obviously at federal level. At state level where you guys operate, I guess for you, it has been a case of, business as usual. But again, what are the noises you're hearing locally, or are they encouraged by what they're sort of seeing?
Yeah, that's another great question. So we actually received some new permits earlier this year during the transitional change. So we knew new government was coming in, but we were able to get a new paste backfill permit, new drilling permits, and also an amendment to our current tailings facility. We have wet tailings, and we got a permit to convert that to dry stack, which is, again, more environmentally friendly. But for an area, state, we're actually in DF, so we're very close to Mexico City. To issue permits during a governmental change is fairly rare. So we do have great relationships. What we see usually is, upper level management maybe changes, but the actual workers, the actual people, the scientists that are involved in permitting, things like that, usually stay the same. And so as long as you have good relationships with them, things move forward. So we chat with them all the time. Again, they're pretty happy. They're excited to see what happens. And, as long as all these projects have, proper environmental work behind them, proper engineering work, and it makes sense for the community, then, I think things will continue to be pushed through.
Okay, and obviously the other factor that's moving along as well as the Mexico factor is the price of silver. It's working in your favor at the moment. How are you feeling about that? What's it doing for you?
Yeah, it's pretty lucky for sure. When you make decisions to push towards production, we're actually currently test mining right now. We're not at commercial production yet. That should happen by the end of the year. So that's part of the plan. It hides, any mistakes that we might have. I know when we acquired La Guitarra during the due diligence process, silver was around 18 US all in, and we were fairly happy then. So at 30, 31, 32, we're absolutely thrilled. There's been a lot of interest. We have an offtake agreement with MRI out of Switzerland, and they're asking for as much as we can possibly produce. So it's been great. We have a couple truckloads heading out every week. our cash flow numbers, are much higher than expected. Whenever you decide to, push towards production, you have to have, relatively, I guess, normal expectations of the price of silver and gold, at least for us. And obviously, our revenues have exceeded those tremendously, which is great. So we'll just continue to put our head down and push towards commercial production. But I think our timing was pretty fortunate, to say the least.
Well, I think the other thing it's doing is kind of giving hope to a lot of kind of juniors who, in the exploration phase, when they kind of look up and see people like Silvercrest Metals deal was rather exciting. So two things going on there with this kind of increase in price, expectation that there will be more money around, Mexico opening up, hopefully more money around, and it's what people do with that money. Big M&A happening for sure. How quickly do you think that kind of comes cascading down through the sector and in terms of reallocation of some of that M&A money? And, how quickly do you think retail are going to come back into or pay attention to Mexico again?
It takes a couple of quarters, to say the least. I think now with some M&A, we're starting to see it. Obviously, First Majestic is our largest shareholder. They purchased Guitarra Silver as well. It was an all-share transaction. And of course, Silvercrest, that's a big one. So I've already had a number of investors reach out saying, hey, investor Silvercrest looking for the next Silvercrest. What are you guys up to? So those conversations are already happening, and that's kind of retail and institutional level. So people are there, and I think they're excited. Again, with what was happening in Mexico, at least politically, that kind of overhang is moving away. So it's opening up. So I think there's going to be quite a more capital available to juniors, whether they're in exploration or, I think more importantly, production. People like less risky. I think at this stage of the game in terms of the longer metals boom, those are the first ones you see to go, or companies that are in production, and then from there it always trickles down to exploration. So there's going to be more capital coming, but it usually takes a number of quarters to get there.
Right. And obviously, through that process, not everyone's going to make it. I kind of hope not everyone's going to make it. You're looking at our database for it to start talking to you. It's like we've got 100 companies with silver projects in Mexico. It kind of feels like too many in a way. There's a lot of distraction and a variety of quality of projects. I think you'd probably agree. How do you feel about the number, the competition? How do you feel about the competition? Because it is competition for money, right?
Yeah. We're okay in terms of capital. We were able to get a $5 million US loan. So we are fully financed towards commercial production. And today's prices, cash flow expectations are quite good. But we're starting to see some more capital raises, equity or various other means, which is positive, at least for us. Honestly, just head down. We have such a large project. It's 30,000 hectares. So the exploration potential is quite large. We truly feel it's probably one of the largest undeveloped silver districts in Mexico. So for us, we're going to use cash flows ourselves and go explore the rest of the project. In terms of the other inflows of capital that might come to the market, that's great. It's going to, help, hopefully the better projects, better companies, things like that push forward. But for us, again, we don't have to rely on that right now because of the cash flows we're generating.
Okay, yeah, it kind of feels like the good times are here again. So I think what I'm taking away from that is Claudia Sheinbaum is good for foreign direct investment of all varieties. You actually touched upon it there. You guys have you got a loan earlier in the year, back in May from your big shareholder, for $500. What are the terms of that, and why are they lending you money?
Yeah, so it's wonderful terms. It's simple, 2 years at 15%, and that's it. It was a 6-month payment holiday. We make interest payments for the first nothing for the first 6 months, and then interest payments for 18 months, and then a lump sum towards the end of the year, and we can pay that back early at any time. It was really just to get us into test mining. So we had a bit of a budget shortfall, about $3.5 million US, about a third of that for underground mining equipment, a third of that to finish some final repairs on the mill, and about a third of that for underground development. So we've used that capital, and yeah, it's obviously worked quite well.
Yeah, I think none of us mind if funding the sort of things that you listed. When it's just to keep the lights on, which I think we've seen a lot of over the past 2-3 years. It's a different matter indeed. But look, you're producing revenue.
Yeah, I would have never taken debt in terms of not being able to pay that back. Yeah, we had a bunch of other offers. I was looking at, debt, whether it was equity or even royalty, perhaps offtake in terms of financing that last little bit of capital we needed. And this was by far the most attractive terms, just because it was quite simple and friendly, and it worked out really well.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's a good deal. Like I say, the cost of capital at the moments like these is, can be quite punitive immediately, and obviously further down the line. But of course, the thing is, you guys are, I know you're ramping up to commercial production, as you call it, but you're also throwing off a bit of revenue right now. So as you say, being able to allocate some of that, and as that grows towards exploration, what's the end game?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have to, relatively be careful in terms of our capital and what we're doing, and today's prices is helpful. So we pushed ahead towards commercial production without a PEA, without a feasibility. So everything I do talk about has to be within context. So, it is higher risk, but again, we're very comfortable with what we have. We understand our costs inside and out. We know our energy costs, we know our mining costs, our transportation costs, our reagent costs. This mine was last production in 2018, so it's pretty simple to get to where our costs should be. So what we want to do is make sure we're ticking along. So commercial production for the mine is 500 tons per day. We're expecting to hit that by the end of the year, and then for 2025. We want to just run at 500 tons per day before we do scale up. So what we eventually want to do is use cash flows to eventually double production. So if all goes well towards 2027, I can see us doubling production to 1,000 tons per day. Historically, at 500 tons per day, the mine was producing about 1 million and 1.5 million ounces of silver equivalent per year. So double that starts to become interesting. Once you kind of achieve over 2 million ounces of silver equivalent a year, usually get that silver multiple, and that's where we want to get to. So that's kind of half the equation is using cash flows to push towards further production and increasing production. But again, we really want to use cash flows as well to go explore the rest of the project. So, give us a bit of time. If all goes well, we'll generate some, decent cash flows, and then look to drill, kind of this time next year.
Okay, I kind of like what I'm hearing. Because it's one of this. Retail investors have learned a lot since 2020, with money being thrown around with gay abandon, and it was people treated it like water. Lots of hard lessons learned, lots of capital destruction, lots of money lost for retail because they've made casual decisions. For you guys as managers, and you got some super experienced guys and gals in there, obviously Greg Smith, etc. on the Explorer Coast side, give you that kind of experience of, they've been through a few cycles. And I know I'm going to put you on the younger side of things. It's not.
I appreciate that.
I know you've been on both sides of the coin in terms of you've been on the street, on the finance side, and, now in management for a while now. But what are the lessons that you've learned during this kind of 3-4 years where it's been a bit tough in the marketplace, which leads you to kind of come up with a plan that you've just laid out? What are the traps that you're trying to avoid? Let's discuss that.
I think the biggest trap is, running into always having to, raise equity at any time. We don't know what's going to happen with the price of metal. That's one thing I can't control. I don't know what's happening to the price of silver. I'm not JP Morgan. But all I can do is kind of control my own costs and my own exploration budget and trying to kind of push forward. So that's always the biggest challenge, is raising capital and smart capital at the right times. It's not an easy thing. Sometimes you have to be a little bit lucky, and we have been, at least with the price of silver. So that's what, in terms of myself, I started this company because I was looking for a silver investment that could grow through production, through exploration, and minimizing dilution. That's always been the key to, my investment thesis. Is great. We see companies, they push forward and, they're raising all this capital, but the share price kind of sticks around the same price. What we're trying to do, it's wealth creation. It is high risk, right? So when people look at these companies and they're looking where to invest, you want to see, cash flow increases. You want to see equity going up. That's the name of the game, is, wealth creation. So that's what we're doing. And any way you can minimize risk and dilution is what you want to be aiming for. At least that's the way I feel.
You make it sound so simple. Well, I think it's well said, because I think a lot of CEOs, a lot of boards kind of forget about the making the money component. They don't necessarily understand the risks either. And I mean, talking one of those factors which we talked about earlier, which is obviously silver price. I don't think precious metals have behaved normally in the last 4 years. And there's been a surge recently. Gold price, we're seeing, $2,600 to $2,700. silver is kind of up there, holding currently steadily over $30. It did that last year as well for a bit. Hitting, between 31 and 32 at the moment. Do you think it's sustainable now, or do you still worry about the sort of market machinations? There's conspiracy theorists talking about, manipulation on one side, and over here you're talking about, economic crashes, and therefore precious metals, will come into the fore again. How do you view it?
That's a good question. So, I'm quite comfortable with today's silver price. I think it's amazing. We're thrilled with it. What I do love about silver, it's not just a store of value. Again, it can be a hedge against inflation, which gold is, and we're seeing money printed. And I think gold is becoming more and more of a safe haven, again, as it has been in the past. So, in terms of the longer term thesis, I'm quite bullish on gold, but even more so on silver. So not only, again, is a store of value, it's also now used in so many industrial processes. And the number one pushing forward is solar panels. So about a quarter of everything that's being produced right now of silver is going towards solar panels. We're seeing huge deficits on an annual basis. And, just a small anecdote is our offtake agreement. I had about 10 groups interested in the offtake. Terms that I have never seen before in terms of charges and things like that. I know some of your guests previously had discussed, zero treatment charges, and that's just crazy. You talk to a lot of traders, and it's usually 150 to 220 US dollars per ton, whether it's copper, whether it's silver, things like that. But today we're seeing almost nothing in terms of treatment charges for traders, which means that there's governments out there that are subsidizing these things, whether it's Europe or Asia. More than likely they want as much metal as they can possibly get. So that gives me quite a bit more comfort knowing that there's a huge market, especially for silver right now, out there. And when our offtake partners are saying give us as much as possible, that's usually a really good sign. So I think longer term, I'm quite bullish on silver as well.
Okay, Alex, I appreciate the update. I know he's coming into Thanksgiving weekend. Is that right?
It is, yeah. The Canadian Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
Our harvest cycle is a little bit different than down south. So,
yeah. So, well, I don't know. At the moment, the weather seems to be playing a big part of the conversation down there too. But
fair enough.
Enjoy your weekend with the kids. Appreciate you coming on and giving us an update on the silver market, and good to hear things progressing well there.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Matthew. Always a pleasure to chat.